Welcome back to It's Kelsey, where we talk about finding your inner roar and breaking free of that self-doubt that is keeping you from achieving your highest potential. I'm here today to talk about that big weight that is on your shoulders or basically on your face because you're covering up and hiding. Before we get started, I'd like to invite you to like and subscribe. Subscribing to a video will help my channel, but also will help you find it in the future because we post here every week on Thursday. So let's get into it, shall we? So today I really wanted to talk about breaking free from hiding yourself, and more particularly getting rid of that heavy mask that you've put on for all of those years. Because I don't know about you, but you might relate that you've had to put on a mask so that you're either approved by society or that you're either approved by your family or just in general because you don't feel like being yourself will actually get you to the places you wanted. I wanted to define what wearing a mask is, because I'm not talking about like the COVID wearing a mask. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you get up and you have to go to work or your job or school or just go visit your family or literally just getting out of bed and being in your own house. I really hope that's not the case. That happens for some of us. So, definition of what wearing a mask is to me is hiding who you truly are in order to be likable to either society or your job or wherever. You feel the need to create an alter ego, if you will, to then be able to go out into the world. So that is the definition as created by me. Basically to make you feel likable. Personally, I grew up adopting having a mask because a lot of family members really had the image of perfection or always wanting to strive for perfection. And for me, I thought that I wasn't perfect with who I was. So in order to fit in with society or fit in with school, I would create a persona of like being the likable person or the person that was like the good girl kind of image, or basically keeping my image appropriate to society, whatever that really means. But that was my view around why I created such a alternative character. Wearing a mask can really be overwhelming and so weight-bearing on your heart and on just everything that your soul is of the essence of. You're metaphorically holding a huge weight when you create a mask to hide your truest self. So things that you might not realize created this mask are things like societal expectations, which is like what I had mentioned. Then fear of judgment. I feel like a lot of us have that fear. And I think that a lot of it comes from the format of school or the format of a teacher. Basically anywhere where you might have received feedback that was not given back to you in a clear or constructive way. And one of the other big ones is self-doubt, because let's face it, I'm pretty sure each and every one of us has self-doubt at some point in our life, if not all the time. Most of us just figure a way to work around it or work through it. But self-doubt is another reason why we would create a mask around who we truly are, so that it appears like we know what we're doing. But let's face it, like, no one knows what we're doing. All of us are just living here in this chaotic world trying to pretend that we know what we're doing. So yeah, that would be why we would create one of those things, though. Well, for an example of why I would have created a mask was really going back to when I was a kid and I was in school, and I was pretty confident in myself and my style early on, but it was more when I got older and more people had shared opinions or spoke up and said, like, oh, you can't do things like that, or you can't do this, or like really just started putting in, like, you have to appear a certain way. And that is why I started creating masks, because I wanted to appear that I was doing okay. I wanted to appear that I was really, but I feel like I really, on the deepest part of that, was just really conscious, because I'd been not validated during a lot of my life, and that was almost a way of protecting myself from any type of validation, whether it be good or bad. It was more of like a defense mechanism to have this perfect image portrayed instead of the vulnerable and messy parts of me. And I don't think I was ready to face those parts of me as growing up anyways. There was things like bullying that would contribute, or things like a teacher would criticize you, or even just going out in society and you would feel the pressure of people judging you. I also think that it was like a way of creating a mask when, for example, like if you're a kid in school and you're a really loud kid and your teachers are constantly telling you to be quiet, or you don't have friends that listen to you, or both, really, creating that mask to fit in and quiet yourself and not be expressing your truest part of you can be another viewpoint of why you would create that mask. Obviously, this mask is invisible, but it's a way of you putting yourself out to the world to portray the best image of you to someone or to the world. Yeah. These masks like really end up hurting who you are, like how you feel, and they start holding a lot of weight because they start preventing you from really connecting with anyone in the most authentic way, because you could still be coming at life with authentic viewpoints and authentic ways, but when you have this mask around you, you're not allowing yourself to connect in the most authentic way. And therefore, your friendships and relationships may suffer a lot more. You might also feel very lonely, and those can be some pretty big drawbacks of having a mask around you. It can also cause you to have mental and physical exhaustion, because if you think about it, you're not only trying to be yourself, but you're also trying to be like the best, most perfect version of yourself in all hours of your life, for the most part. There's going to be some hours where you're not having to create that image, but that is going to be very mentally and physically exhausting when you're constantly thinking and feeling and doing things to create this mask, this image that you feel the need to have to be able to be liked. I guess it could also really stem from not feeling worthy of the situation you're in. So you think in order to be worthy, you have to be someone somewhat different. That can be another part of having this mask around you. So for me, working in the service industry when I did was really a way that I noticed my outward mask a lot more, because you would almost adapt different voices for work versus everyday life. And there was quite a few of us that did this. And that really became like our customer service voice. But if you think about that, that's actually creating a mask, because you want to appear perfect for the workplace that you're in. And you also want to appear to be happy, maybe on days when you aren't. And that can be really exhausting. Like, the job itself can be exhausting, let alone you also holding up an entire new character of yourself. That's exhausting. So I feel like that would be a very personal relation on when I noticed myself creating these masks. And you don't have to just have one mask, you can have multiple for different situations. But they all serve one purpose. They all serve a purpose of being likable, being accepted by society, and striving for an image of perfection. I think if we boil this down, I feel like the three biggest reasons why people would create a mask is fear of criticism or rejection, desire for acceptance or approval, which is kind of the same concept, just a reverse way of looking at it from the first one, and the last one being protection from vulnerabilities or insecurities. I guess I mentioned that a bit earlier as to why some of my masks were created. But I feel like all three of these reasons boil down to one thing. They boil down to an underlying feeling of worthiness. So if you think of the first one, fear of rejection or criticism, you're fearful of being rejected or being criticized can really ultimately boil down to a feeling of not being worthy. Because if you were feeling worthy, you wouldn't care if someone rejected you or criticized you. You would say, I know I'm worthy, and it doesn't matter what people think of me. And same goes with the second one. The desire for approval or acceptance is also a deep-seated feeling of not being worthy. But it also can be when you maybe grew up in a childhood home where you didn't have maybe a big parental figure who was able to give you time or attention. And so that's why you're striving to have this mask, so that you will get that acceptance and that approval, which is in turn going to validate you on a personal level. And then the third one, protecting yourself from vulnerabilities or insecurities. That also can come from not feeling worthy, but it also can come from a feeling of needing to hide, which is all of these as well. But the fact that you don't feel like you can be vulnerable or sharing any insecurity can come from not being emotionally available or even having an emotionally unavailable parent, because them being unavailable showed you that you also didn't need to be available or vulnerable in any way. And that then causes you to hide that truest self because you weren't shown how to navigate that. You then chose to hide it. I know what you're thinking. You're like, okay, can we please just like break free of this? Because I want to keep staying in this process. I want to get rid of it. I want to keep going and say bye-bye to that mask. So here's a few things I'm going to share. Breaking free of that mask is possible. It really is. There's a few things that are going to go into it. So the first one, creating more self-awareness and self-approval. This may sound simple, but it will take a lot of work. Being able to do the work is one of the biggest things that is going to cultivate this change. By having self-acceptance and self-approval, you are learning to validate that self within you, and in turn that is going to make you realize your worth, because everyone is worthy. You are born worthy. It is only through the actions and the crazy things you go through in life, or even traumas, that create this feeling that you aren't worthy. But we always have been worthy. It's just a feeling that you aren't. So once we recognize that this is a feeling and that we are truly worthy, we can start to work on how we validate that within ourselves. And that looks different for each and every one of us. A second way is to practice vulnerability and expressing and creating, encourage in expressing. Ooh, that was a tough one. Didn't get that one out. And having courage in expressing. And that means to start sharing and start being vulnerable and start opening up. And in that way, you don't have to do that outwardly to society. You can start by doing that even just writing things in your journal. You can start by doing that with close friendships. You can start doing that with family. You can honestly start doing that with anyone you feel like you're more comfortable with. By sharing these vulnerabilities and starting to have the courage to express yourself, that is gonna grow your feeling of worth and also grow your confidence. And by expressing that vulnerability and having that courage to express it is also going to get rid of that mask little by little, because you're showing your truest self then, and you don't need that mask to be in front of who you truly are. And a third one that can be really helpful is to find friendships and communities in which you feel yourself. This might be one of the easier ones to start with, because finding a community can really be helpful in expressing who you really are as a person. And especially nowadays that we have online things, I find that it can be a little bit easier to express who you truly are, especially if you're an introvert, to express who you really are over the internet when you don't truly know the community of people that you're in a group with. And a lot of times people are going to respond quite positively. That will also encourage you to have that confidence level, so that when you are out just with friends or even with a community in person, your confidence level will be higher in order to keep expressing who you truly are in those groups as well. And by finding those groups, you can find them by just finding certain places on the web that you feel comfortable, like certain, if you're very into art, something with art or artists, If you're into sports, it could be something around a sporting team or even like a social club, sport and social club type idea. That can also be helpful. Like just finding a community. That is one of the biggest things that has been helpful to me, is when you have that sounding board of people that are in your energy fields, it can be quite helpful. Some of the things that I did to overcome my fear of being seen was firstly reading a lot of self-help books. And I feel like that sounds like a cliche answer, but that's really where it truly started for me. I started to realize that a lot of people had similar experiences. And then from there, I did a lot of meditation and a lot of body movement. I didn't used to really be one that would work out or do much in that sense. I was much more into art and music, but I have realized that moving your body through, say, yoga or workouts or bike riding or rock climbing or really any sport or way of body movement is so helpful, because the body and the mind do work together. So that is one of the other reasons why I incorporated that so heavily into my routine. And there was really just finding more and more people to connect. And I had to start being more vulnerable and sharing more of my story. Like for me, I feel like if I didn't share some of the things that I'd been through, I wouldn't have the same connection with any of these people if I wasn't sharing something that someone else could possibly relate to. So open yourself up. Be willing to share vulnerable stories. You don't need to go into details when you're sharing vulnerable stories. You can just share things that have happened to you. And I'm sure 9 times out of 10, someone else has had something at least similar happen to them or a family member. So reflect on your own mess, because I'm sure many of us have more than one. And I would love to hear in the comments what things you can maybe do to get rid of what mask you have been holding up. Your arms are tired, as mine were too. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this, because I love to be able to cultivate community and sharing ideas. And I just really want more women to be able to feel more connected, because sometimes in this world we really don't have as many connections, even though we do have internet to do that. This is my way of sharing to be able to connect with more like-minded women who have gone through some things and really want to find that voice that they know is deep within them. So I hope that you're having a wonderful day, and I can't wait to see you next week. See you later.